We have to do 6 movies again.
Of course we do.
So this is fun. It's probably going to be 6 movies at least all the way till the half of the year.
You say that now, and then we're just going to be jinxed from now on.
I think there's already 6 set for next week.
I believe there is.
So, we're going to start with Maleficent. Okay, obviously Maleficent is the notoriously evil villain from Sleeping Beauty. Well, Disney thought it would be cool to give her a little backstory. And there was a whole lot of hope with this, surprisingly, because of the fantastic casting choice of Angelina Jolie. Which, whether you like her or not, is a great casting choice.
I agree with that. She actually fit the character very well.
And some stills were released, and the trailers came out, and it seemed to have this really dark feel to it. Like when Burton was doing Alice in Wonderland, and everybody had a lot of hope, and it came out being some Funhouse bullshit.
Yeah.
It kind of seemed like what everybody was hoping that was going to be. Actually, like, dark and a little out of the ordinary as far as Disney's concerned. At least currently. And there was one review, I didn't really look too much into this, but one reviewer apparently said there was something reminiscent of Under the Skin about it. I saw a still a long time ago. It was the first still that was released. It was supposedly leaked. It was a black and white one, and it was her standing in like just in disarray around her. And it looked like a still from The Seventh Seal or something. And that got me really hopeful. And then, like, I haven't been watching trailers this year, but I hear them because I just shut my eyes. When I heard that line in the trailer where Elle Fanning tells her to come out.
It's awesome.
And she says, why are you afraid? And she says, I'm not afraid. And she says, well, come out. And then she says, but then you'll be afraid. Just hearing that line I thought was really fucking creepy and really awesome.
The delivery was amazing.
Of course at the time, but obviously I didn't see anything. I didn't realize. The image I had in my head is us just seeing blackness and just hearing her voice. In the movie, she's like in plain view when she says it. But anyway, point being, I had a lot of hope going into this. Foolishly. We didn't have a good week this week regarding movies, so...
Nope.
You saw 2 of them, but you can take my word on the other 4.
Yeah.
So, okay. The movie starts, and Janet McTeer, I read, is narrating. I didn't recognize her voice, but I read later that it was, which I can kind of hear it now. And we see this little girl on what looks like the set of A Midsummer Night's Dream, laying in a tree, and we're being told that this might look like a girl, but it's actually a fairy. And we see the innocent little girl, and she's got Maleficent's horns, and we learn that this is her as a little girl. And she's very innocent. And she flies out of the tree, and she's got her wings, and she flies over these little creatures that are right out of Arthur and the Invisibles. And everything is really happy, and then she falls in love with the future king, and everything is, happy, and everything is wonderful. I understand if movies are going to take a twisted turn at some point, but it was at this point in the movie where I actually thought in my head, what the fuck is this? This is not what this was not what I had registered my brain to prepare for.
Nope, not at all.
But then I thought, well, maybe it gets darker later, because obviously she's got to turn at some point. Kind of like, well, the reason I thought this was kind of ridiculous was because Maleficent is such an evil character.
Yes.
In Sleeping Beauty, she had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. She was just 100% pure evil from beginning to end. No sign of a heart whatsoever.
Nope.
So the reason I was immediately put off by this opening is, one thing, and a lot of people don't like this performance, but I do, so you can suck it. But I was thinking about Mila Kunis in Oz the Great and Powerful.
Yeah.
Because she started off as Oz's love interest, and we knew she was eventually going to become the Wicked Witch of the West. But the thing that Mila Kunis did in that movie is, even when she's innocent she still plays it like she has sinister undertones that are just kind of waiting to come out. There's no sign of that whatsoever when we first see Maleficent. So that was kind of, that whole beginning just felt like. But anyway, I thought I was getting my wish though, because eventually Maleficent grows into Angelina in a cloud transition shot, and the future king has grown into Sharto Copley.
Yeah, it did.
Which obviously we know will eventually be Aurora's dad. Mm-hmm. Once she's born. She's obviously not born yet. Because he and Maleficent have a thing. Well, because we live in that era now, with Alice in Wonderland and Snow White and countless others, Disney thinks, what can we put into these fairy tales to make them more gritty and, dark? I've got it. Let's just have armies fight for no reason. Let's just have lots of armor and a bunch of knights and just fighting for something.
Sure.
So this movie starts with a battle, and of course Maleficent is on the other side of it, and we learn that she's Wolverine, apparently. She can get sliced and then just heal. But anyway, she fatally injures the current king. So Sharto Copley decides he's going to take revenge, so he can be the king and surpass him, but he's got to kill Maleficent to do that. But he doesn't want to because he still kind of loves... I think he loves her. The movie never really, gives us his side.
No.
We just know that he's vengeful. So he goes to stab her, but he doesn't. Instead, he cuts her wings off while she sleeps. I have no idea how that didn't wake her up, but he cut off her wings while she slept. It wasn't until she woke up that she freaked out and he was long gone. So he presents the wings to his father, and fast forward, he becomes king. And he keeps the wings in a glass case and, promises to eventually, rid the... She, does the whole makes the forest walker off from everything thing. So, finally the story gets familiar, and Aurora is born. And the three fairies come in. Apparently they're not Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather anymore. They're fucking who cares bullshit. And they come in and they do the whole, they present... And it's Imelda Staunton, Leslie Manville, and Juno Temple. I recognized Imelda Staunton immediately. Juno Temple, it took me a second. I didn't recognize Leslie Manville until she was human. Because what they've done is... the bullshit all these movies have been doing where they make these creatures, like these woodland creatures, that are obvious CG and not convincing whatsoever. Well, they've basically taken that technology and made the three fairies and kind of somewhat animated and superimposed the three actresses' faces on them, and it looks really weird and off. But anyway, so it's the scene you saw in Sleeping Beauty, word for word, and like shot for shot even, for the next 10 minutes or so, where the fairies are doing the whole, I present you with this and I present you with this, and then, not Fauna, Juno Temple is doing it, and then Maleficent comes, and all her glorious black, left over from Mr. and Mrs. Smith leather. And she does the whole, she places the curse on her where she's going to prick her finger on the wheel, and then she's going to die, and only true love's first kiss can bring her back. This is the scene that happened where I was like, okay, this is what I was looking for. Because this is when Maleficent is in all her evil glory. And they actually added something to the original scene, which was, she's very vengeful, obviously, because, Stefan doesn't love her anymore and cut her wings off and shit. So, basically, she's casting the spell, and he's telling her to stop. And she looks at him and very coldly says, I want you to beg me. So she actually makes him get on his knees and beg her. And I was like, oh yeah, this is adding that darkness to the already dark story I was looking for.
Exactly.
And then the movie goes like it does. They burn all the wheels, they send her off with the fairies to live until she's 16, the day after. And then everything will be fine. That's as far as the story goes, as far as you know it. Now, let me talk about this bullshit for a second. this movie tries to get away with something, but it kind of just ends up being frustrating. Because what Jana McTeer's narration bookends the movie. She says it at the end, the beginning and the end. They're building it up as this is the story you thought you knew, but this is something different. This is the real story. This is the one that's the movie from 1959 was a total lie. We've been lied to our whole lives. This is the real story. This is the first time in a long time I think I've liked being lied to, if that's the case. What actually happened, apparently, was, obviously we know the story as Maleficent just thought she had disappeared, and then 16 years later she showed up again. In actuality, Maleficent kind of turns into a creeper and finds her immediately because her crow friend that you know can turn into a person now. That's Sam Riley, by the way, who's actually not bad in this.
No.
But he can turn into anything she wants him to turn into. He likes being a bird. He's like Peter Lorre in The Raven. He just kind of goes from being the Raven to the crow to the person. Sometimes he can be a wolf. And the movie really, really fucked up at the end using him, but I'll get to that later. So what Maleficent does is she basically stakes out the little cottage that they live in. Mind you, she wants nothing more than for Aurora to be dead. That is Maleficent's whole purpose in life, is for Aurora to die. So what she does is she just hangs out. And she plays does little pranks on them. Like, she makes it rain inside the house. Because it's fun for her, I guess. I thought Maleficent's way of fun would be a little more dark than, it's raining in the house. But, apparently, and another thing, they basically turned her into the crotchety old neighbor lady that you see in all those movies where you think she's really mean-spirited and hates everything, but if you get to know her, she's got a heart of gold underneath all the blackness that she's just dying to let out. This is what this movie's turned Maleficent into. There's a scene in the movie where she's actually... Okay. She actually becomes... This makes no sense to me. Maybe somebody can make sense out of it, I don't know. The whole point of the movie, the whole reason the spell is on Aurora is because Maleficent wants her dead. But there are two scenes where this could have happened, and she didn't have to do anything. But okay. Obviously, the three fairies are inept, because they've never raised a child before. So they just kind of let Aurora cry all day. And Maleficent, as you know her, is sitting outside the house, listening to the baby cry, and her response is, "Oh my god, they're so inept, they're going to make that little baby starve to death." Isn't that what you want? And then, later, even more ridiculously, she actually saves Aurora's life.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're hanging out by a cliff, and she happens to wander away. And she literally walks right off the cliff, but Maleficent is there with a tree to save her. See, okay, but the way they make up for that is the way they've totally changed the character. Because instead of Maleficent doing evil things just because she's evil, they basically turned her into somebody who overreacts. Like, she almost, I don't know if it's exactly word for word, but she basically says casting the spell on Aurora was an overreaction.
She tries to take it back, too.
Yeah. So,
If that would have happened, the movie never would have went the way it did.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I know they were trying to basically make her kind of sympathetic and make her like an anti-hero and stuff like that.
It's like Wicked.
But this was not the character to do that with.
No.
You don't take a character that's 100% evil and try to do something. You do somebody that can believably be, a sympathetic character. This would have been the last character on the list to do that with. There is actually one... Okay. Despite how much they really fucked this up, Angelina Jolie is really, really good at it.
Yeah.
So, if you just imagine that she's not playing the Maleficent that you know, she's really great at it. But there's one thing that kind of stood out, and I guess you could the whole thing you could really put on like the script's fault and the director's fault. But if there's one thing I guess you can kind of throw on the fault of the actress is some certain line deliveries, like when I say she's like the crotchety neighbor lady, there is a particular part in this movie where she meets little Aurora, and her response to this is, "I hate children." We know Maleficent hates children because she has planned for this girl to die on her 16th birthday. And that's all that she wants, supposedly. However, her delivery of "I hate children" made it sound more like a baseball had just landed in her backyard. You know?
Like James Earl Jones in The Sandlot.
Yes. So, there were some elements of this movie that really should have, and there's a couple. It looks really good, like aesthetically, and there's like when I was talking about the scene that reminded me of the shot like out of The Seventh Seal or something. Mm-hmm. There's another shot where like she's destroying everything behind her as she walks down the sidewalk. That was me hitting the lamp.
Good.
And that kind of looks like the Dance of Death shot at the end of The Seventh Seal.
Okay.
But what very little stuff it felt like they actually did right, and they could have blossomed into a greater movie, is really pummeled to death by all of this not so great stuff, and all the lack of creativity, like the what the fuck with these little woodland creatures. They all look the goddamn same now. These, like I said before, the Arthur and Invisibles cast, more or less, and she has this scene where after she's taken, revenge and cast the spell and all that, where she basically turns into the Scar of the forest and takes over and makes all the creatures bow to her. That scene would have been really awesome and dark if it weren't for the fact that, when we see these creatures like giving in and bowing down to her, are these her minions now? That who was that bumbling blue frog thing? These are her followers now.
Yeah. Kind of a drop in quality, just a little bit.
Yeah. So, and the thing is when I talked about her being an anti-hero, that's not really the approach they took. She is basically a full-on hero, and they turned the king into the villain. The king, as the person that did everything to protect his daughter by basically worked for 16 years to keep her alive by destroying all the wheels and, keeping her secluded and all that. Was all to keep her safe. This guy is the hardcore villain of the movie. I don't know whose decision that was, but it doesn't feel like things are really balancing out here. The main reason we're supposed to accept Maleficent as a hero is because we saw her as the innocent little heartbroken girl.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, as far as some of the ending is concerned... Oh, by the way, if you thought Philip was an underdeveloped character in the original movie, which he absolutely was, because he's just there to be true love's first kiss... There don't even have to be a real feeling of love here. He just has to be there. That's the only purpose of his character. Well, they cast Brenton Thwaites, who I loved so much in Oculus, to basically be as bland and worthless to this movie as possible.
Yeah.
And speaking of casting, Elle Fanning as Aurora also... I don't know if it's the way they wrote the character or if it's Fanning's performance specifically, but Aurora also is extremely bland and not really worth caring about. And the only... I know that's her thing because she was, blessed that way, but just the way she's happy constantly is more grating than, joyful. Now, as far as this ending is concerned, without spoiling anything, yeah, you should already know this story, but fuck, whatever. Well, first off, Remember when I was talking about Sam Riley's character, how he can morph into anything?
Yes.
Well, here's what I was thinking about through the whole movie. When I was really complaining about how Maleficent isn't evil enough. My thought was, okay, something really big has to go down, because the only way this story can end is with her turning into a dragon.
Yep.
I was waiting for that the whole movie, because I was like, okay, what happens to make that happen? Maleficent does not turn into a dragon in this movie.
Nope.
She makes her minion do it. You know, the crow that follows her around? She morphs him into a dragon and makes him do it. Because, you know, that would just be too evil. She can't do that enough. So, she's too nice. She can't do it. She can't hurt all those people. Maleficent would never ever hurt anybody, apparently, according to this movie. And that's also not to mention that this movie gets so out of control by the end. There's actually a slow-mo shot where Maleficent bursts through a window that reminded me of a shot right out of something like I, Frankenstein. So, yeah. So, you were telling me, this is one of those movies where, oh, and by the way, if you're wondering where Maleficent's staff came from, she just randomly picked up a stick one day and turned it into one.
Yeah.
That's big mystery solved there. Now, this is one of those movies, and I don't mean to, like, make fun of people or anything. I don't, but you were telling me, okay, the reason movies like this are made is because it's basically for teenagers that think cartoons are for kids.
Yep.
That's basically why these movies are made.
The Hot Topic generation.
And so, yeah, I can already see Angelina's face.
It's already there.
Okay.
Go to the website right now.
So anyway, you can buy like really cheap styrofoam horns. That'll be the hot Halloween costume.
Spend a lot of money and get the real stuff at Disney, people.
You were telling me about you saw a girl come out of it today,
Mm-hmm.
and she was saying how this was much better than the original, and
Mm-hmm.
that one was cheesy and stuff like that.
Yep.
And basically the reason they started making these live-action movies was to take it to a darker route than the animated movies did. Because of that connotation that everybody thinks animated movies are for kids. I hate to break it to you people, but if you go back and watch Sleeping Beauty again, Sleeping Beauty is the really dark one, and this, by far, is the sugar-coated version.
Absolutely.
In what world do you live in where you praise this one for being great and dark and criticize that one for being a kids movie, when the kids movie is the one that has the dark magic murderer for a villain, and this is the one that turns her into whatever the fuck this is? Yeah.
She even refers to her by name as her fairy godmother.
So, that's basically what this movie did. Now, I tried to think of it from the perspective of not comparing it so much to the original character, but I don't know. This is basically the equivalent of remaking Star Wars with Darth Vader as the hero and Luke Skywalker as the villain. It would make no fucking sense at all.
No.
So, yeah. I don't know what this movie was doing, but it was really frustrating to watch. And very, very disappointing.
Yeah.
So, that's a bummer. But I don't know why. I mean, not to hate on Disney or anything, but I mean, in the vein, you know, with like Alice in Wonderland, Snow White and the Huntsman, and all that shit. I don't know why I expected it would be something different, but
I am excited for Cinderella, though.
Well, Kenneth Branagh's got that one.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We'll see what happens. Okay. Our second movie this week is pretty much the only good thing we have to talk about.
Yeah.
A Million Ways to Die in the West, which is Seth MacFarlane's love letter to Blazing Saddles. He basically just wanted to do something exactly in the vein of it, more or less.
But curse a whole lot more.
Yeah. I mean, the Blazing Saddles is still rated R, I think, but
It is.
not to this. Yeah, for the Madeline Kahn scenes alone, it is pretty much. So basically, there's actually a lot of characters here and a lot of plot, kind of. We start with Seth MacFarlane's character, who is this. He's basically Don Knotts in The Shakiest Gun in the West.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's an homage.
I'm sure it is.
And basically he's a sheep herder who can't shoot worth of shit, and he basically can't do anything right. And he's constantly paranoid because everybody dies in the West by something. He goes through, I mean, there's obviously not a million of them, but he does go through an entire list in that scene at the bar. And he has a girlfriend who is Amanda Seyfried and a best friend who is Giovanni Ribisi. And basically the opening, right after he botches a shootout, Amanda Seyfried breaks up with him because she's basically going nowhere with him. So she leaves to find herself, only to be leaving him for Neil Patrick Harris. Because for some reason in the movie world, women love Neil Patrick Harris and he loves them back.
Yes.
But, and then we have this other plot going on where he decides that he wants to duel Neil Patrick Harris for Amanda Seyfried's love.
Mm-hmm.
So he runs into Charlize Theron, who is actually the wife of the most notorious killer in the West, who is Liam Neeson. But she doesn't tell him that she is his wife because she kind of resents him because he's evil. So they basically start a friendship and eventually fall in love, and she teaches him how to shoot, more or less, so that he can win this duel with Neil Patrick Harris. And there's a side thing going on with Giovanni Ribisi's character where he is in love with a prostitute played by Sarah Silverman, who basically whores herself out 15 times a day, but will not have sex with Giovanni Ribisi until they're married.
Because she's a good Christian girl.
Yes. And Giovanni Ribisi also really firmly believes in that. He sits outside in the bar with a bouquet of flowers and waits for her, and you can hear her and dudes up there. And at this point, I should probably tell you, there were 2 walkouts.
Yeah.
They were all older people. There was one kind of in the middle of the movie, an older couple, and then there were 2 older ladies that got up and left in the first 5 minutes. I know the exact line those old ladies got up. At the very beginning, Sarah Silverman comes down after just having been with somebody, and she goes to kiss Giovanni Ribisi, and he recoils, and he's like, "What's wrong with your breath?" And she's like, "Oh, I just gave a blowjob." They were gone.
Gone.
And it had been sexual up to that point, too. There's a funny gag that MacFarlane does with the shadows as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, did I miss a character? Those are the main ones, I think, all of them. So
Main characters, yeah, you're good.
Okay. And so it's basically a satire on westerns, and also just the time period in general. Like, there's an ongoing joke about how nobody smiles in pictures, and there was because if you do, you look insane. And then there was a funny delivery from Amanda Seyfried towards the beginning where she's talking about she has to break up with him because life is moving so fast, and she's like, I mean, people are living to 35 these days. I gotta get so. However, yeah, as far as Seth MacFarlane being the brains behind this, you're probably asking how offensive it is. Honestly, I kind of expected him to push the envelope a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But there's still some stuff in there. I mean, yeah, a lot of people like to criticize MacFarlane, and to an extent it's true. It seems like he says offensive things just to throw them out there with no purpose, and there's not really... It almost doesn't even seem like it's to be funny, it's just to throw it in there to be shocking. There is an early reference to Parkinson's for pretty much no reason.
No reaction from anyone in the theater for that either.
The shooting game at the fair is called Runaway Slaves, and that's what's, yeah. The logo that you see like on the poster for Bamboozled with the watermelon in the face, yes, that's the logo of the game. And yeah, there's obviously, I guess the callback to it is at the beginning we're getting the narration, and he says something about people being born in the wrong generation or something, or at the wrong time. I think that's the setup for all the pop culture references.
Okay.
And just the seemingly modern way the characters have. So it's not totally out of place, because that's kind of the... I guess that's kind of what he was going for.
Yeah.
Like there's... what was there? There's one that nobody seemed to catch, and I don't even watch the show, so I was lucky to get it. There's little references and callbacks, like if you're a How I Met Your Mother fan, Seth MacFarlane's character challenges Neil Patrick Harris to a duel, and Neil Patrick Harris's response is "challenge accepted," which apparently is his catchphrase or something on that show, from what I hear. I can't read my own writing. Okay.
Now you know how I feel on wrestling recaps.
Yeah. It was really dark in that theater.
It was.
I'll go through the cast. I think MacFarlane is fine here. I think he does the overly paranoid guy rather well. The problem with him is I can imagine, not from me personally, but I can imagine him being grating to some people.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes he gets really, really over the top. And
that's a turnoff to a lot of people.
Yeah. Charlize Theron is, you know, she doesn't really like stand out or anything, but she's good with what she has to do. I'm a little split on the Liam Neeson character. First off, the funny thing about that is there's actually some background to this. Liam Neeson was on Jimmy Fallon talking about how he ended up in this movie. And I think I vaguely remember it. There's a Family Guy episode that Liam Neeson's kids showed him. And this was the first time he had even heard what Family Guy was. And the joke was, if Liam Neeson were in a Western, he would just be Liam Neeson still using his Irish accent. Even in a Western. So when MacFarlane called him up and asked him to do this, Liam Neeson wanted to stick with the joke and say, if you let me use my Irish accent. So... The problem with his character is, what I liked about it was, normally if you take a serious actor and you put them in a comedy, you're risking the chance of them kind of being intimidated by it being a comedy and trying to be funny, and it comes off kind of false. But Liam Neeson plays it totally straight. He plays it as if he's in a serious Western. Which I do like a lot, and I do really like him in the movie.
Definitely.
But the more I started to think about that, the more I realized the reason he's able to play it so straight is they don't give his character anything funny to do. Like, if they had given him, like, funny shit to do or say while being serious Irish accented Liam Neeson, it would have been a lot funnier, and the character would have been more memorable. But he's basically just a straight villain.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have to... The one thing... Really, the only one thing is, there's a point in time where he looks like he's getting ready to rape Charlize Theron's character. So he already has his pants down, and then she knocks him out. And while he's laying there with his ass hanging out, she sticks a flower up his ass. And then, later on, he brings that back, after he's come to. And in a very threatening manner, he just holds up the flower and says, you know, we got shit to do. That's the closest he comes to getting something funny to actually do. Which is no fault of his whatsoever. It's just... I think they could have done a lot more with that character, and he could have had more screen time, too. Giovanni Ribisi is great here. He, another one of those callbacks you'll notice is kind of a, I guess you could say a pop culture reference now. When they're at the formal and everybody's dancing, he's standing off to the side by the bar dancing by himself, and it's the dance he was doing in Ted. Mm-hmm. Sarah Silverman, I really, really love Sarah Silverman. I pretty much love anything she does. I know she's an acquired taste, and I probably have a lot more people disagreeing with me there, but she's really great here and plays this. She was perfectly cast in this part.
Completely agreed.
And I'm just really starting to love her, like, as an actress a lot lately, ever since Take This Waltz. So, who else? The great thing here is, and this is another thing where I'm pretty sure people probably disagree with me, I think Neil Patrick Harris is the funniest character in the movie. Even though he's kind of a one-joke character, the whole movie that joke was working for me. I can understand if it gets really old really soon for a lot of people, but the joke never stopped working with me. if you've seen like him like in the promotion stuff, obviously his character's joke is that he has that mustache.
He looks like my friend Tim. He really does.
And pretty much every single time he's on screen, it's a joke about his mustache. When they go to obviously it's a Seth MacFarlane movie, there's a musical number. Where they go to the formal one, there's a whole musical number about mustaches. He's got a mustache on the handle of his gun. Later on in the movie, when he's on drugs, Seth MacFarlane imagines him as a sheep, and the sheep has the bowler hat and the mustache. There is a...
I was hoping you would go there, because if you didn't, I was going to.
There's a very interesting scene where he's basically aroused. I'll leave it at that. There's something you can do with his mustache that very much arouses him. I forget what his line was now. Something like, my social stature is significant.
Yeah.
That's the stuff he says when he's horny, apparently. So yeah, that character actually worked for me through the whole movie, but I can understand if, after a while he gets old.
His sheep puns.
Yeah, he speaks in puns a lot, and he does there's a lot of the modern catchphrases like, oh snap, and oh I went there, and shit like that. But, like the whole, who taught you to shoot? Your wife. Giovanni Ribisi's the one that, so yeah, I think you might, I guess it just depends on how much you can take, because some of it, it's a little long.
Yeah.
It's almost 2 hours, and there's one scene in particular that kind of feels pointless, where we're pretty much reaching the end, and they have this whole other segment where he's with the Native Americans, and he's speaking their language, but he's just basically talking in gibberish, like...
Mm-hmm.
Like, fine, you say Mila Kunis and shit like that. I'm pretty sure when he was saying, like, his whole dialogue, I heard taco in there.
Yeah.
But these Indians give him a bowl of something that's meant for the whole tribe, but it's so tiny he just takes the whole thing. And basically totally gets drugged out. And the scene gets really weird.
Yeah.
But at the start of it, it was more like a bunch of leftover gags they had that they didn't know where to put in the movie. Mm-hmm. So they just kind of stuck them in here. That, especially that far into the movie, felt kind of out of place and like it was making it a little too long.
That feels about midway through is where it should have been.
However, despite all that, I did think it was consistently funny. Obviously, not all the jokes work.
Yeah.
There's one joke in particular where he basically says the joke, and then the scene plays out, and then he leaves, and then he steps back onto the screen and tells the whole audience, "Oh, by the way, just so in case you didn't figure out what I meant by that joke," and he explains. I know that's the joke that he has to explain the joke, but that went on for a while and felt more embarrassing than funny. So. Because the joke he was making wasn't really
that funny.
But there's another thing that he does. It really does have that. He did kind of capture the Blazing Saddles feel, where it actually does. I mean, for the most part, unfortunately, sometimes the sets look a little cheap, and sometimes the scenes feel more like filmed rehearsals than actual movie scenes. But there are scenes that do legitimately feel like they're out of, like, not just comedy westerns, but, like, out of a western in general. There's a couple of scenes that actually really feel authentic in that way. But, and it's something that, I mean, sometimes he gets down to the, obviously all the humor is pretty much really, really, really low-brow.
Yeah.
Like, into the Earth's core low. But, like, there's a scene where he goes all Sandler on us that involves a pissing sheep. But, yeah, I found it a lot more funny than the jokes that didn't work. It's probably something where, like, if it's, like, on TV, like, a year from now, I'll probably watch it more than once. It's fine.
We still haven't got our major comedy of the rest of the year yet.
Now, as far as, I don't know, you probably don't want this spoiled if you want everything. to be fresh. But obviously, in a Seth MacFarlane movie, you're going to have cameos.
Yes.
I would have expected more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a Seth MacFarlane movie, you almost expect Muppets-level cameos. But there's still a few.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through those real quick, and if you don't want to hear them, you might as well, like, go now or go further into the video or whatever you want to do.
For a little bit, because it's not going to be as long as it would be to go to the next segment, so...
The first one I noticed was Bill Maher
Yeah.
as the MC at the formal, which is random as fuck. And they basically run it like a talk show where he's like, it's like rock slates that he has his cue cards on.
I thought that was hilarious.
Very
Very Flintstones.
Yeah. There is John Michael Higgins is in the
Yes.
bar just hanging out there.
So awesome.
The credits were rolling. And I'm really pissed that I didn't see him. I want to go watch it again just so I can find him.
Yeah.
I didn't see him, but when you watch the credit roll, apparently there was a cowboy at the fair that was Ewan McGregor.
Charlize got him in the movie. I actually was reading about it just a little bit ago on Wikipedia.
I wish he's probably going to be blatantly obvious the next time I see him.
Yeah, that's how it always is.
I didn't see him this time.
And I didn't see the Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart either.
If that's the same one.
No, it is.
We missed.
I checked into it. It is.
We didn't talk about the fact that Mr. Belding is in this.
Oh God.
Okay. And lastly, I'm forgetting one.
You've got more than one, sir. I've got a couple ones for you.
When he's having his flashbacks during the drug scene, we get a scene with Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
I knew Abraham Lincoln was going to be a cameo.
By that voice, you could tell who it was. Too.
I was a little disappointed because MacFarlane has so many people in his Rolodex.
Yeah, no
he has
lie.
a Rolodex the size of a dictionary.
He does.
When there was a delay before Abraham Lincoln took the podium, my mind actually went to, oh my God, what if it's Daniel Day-Lewis?
That would have been awesome.
That would have been amazing. But still, it's a pretty unexpected cameo.
We got our mark out cameo. Don't worry.
Abraham Lincoln is Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah, it is. Basically talking to a graduating class about how he's rich now because he's the president. I was poor just like you, and now I'm the president.
Now, granted, by no means, write this sentence down. By no means is Gilbert Gottfried Daniel Day-Lewis.
No.
But that was still a funny scene.
Yeah, it was.
Because that was that's not the I was expecting a cameo there, but that was certainly unexpected, and that's what all you can ask for with cameos.
Well, there's 4 big ones left, but before we get into those, I do want to mention obviously the Family Guy connection. Alex Borstein is in the bar as well.
She's in the opening credits.
And for those of you out there that are Sir fans, Ralph Garman's in this movie too.
Who's that?
He's from the Kevin Smith podcast. Yeah.
So, the last 30 seconds of this movie. Actually, it's more like the last 15 seconds.
Not yet. There's a couple more than that.
Who'd we miss?
Well, actually, there's one that you didn't refer to, and apparently, I wasn't sure, but apparently it's what it is. The voice of the sheep was Patrick Stewart.
He's also the narrator of Ted, so I figure he had to have been in there. Who was the narrator of the movie?
The narrator of the movie is Rex Lynn. Shoop. He was the sheriff in the movie. The other one, I saw this. I don't know if you caught it or not. Ryan Reynolds got shot in the bar.
I was thinking it might have. I wasn't sure. Oh, because of Ted, I should have known it was him.
Yes.
Because I saw him and I was like, wow, that really looked like him, but my mind didn't register it was actually him.
There's 2 big ones left. One was
yeah.
blown in the trailer, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, here's the problem. There's a couple things wrong. There's actually 2. Okay. I know I should just enjoy the cameos for what they are and not dissect them or anything. But there's a couple of things a little off with the next 2 cameos.
Yes.
If you want to talk timelines.
Yes.
Now, of course, time travel, you can do anything.
Literally.
Thanks to you,
Sorry.
I had known about the cameo by Christopher Lloyd actually as Emmett Brown. They're in the barn with the DeLorean, which I believe is a callback to the first one, even though We're in the West, which was the 3rd movie, but anyway.
Yeah.
I thought this kind of would have had some significance when I heard about it, but it really is there for no reason, and it's at the end of a scene that it has no place in whatsoever. Sam Riley is just left Maleficent set and is walking down the street right now.
You can tell the theater that we were in just had no idea who Christopher Lloyd was.
Well, and secondly, I assume it's a callback to Back to the Future 3 because of the Western setting. Mm-hmm. But when Doc Brown went back to the West, he went in the train. I'm not sure what he's doing with the DeLorean.
Continuity errors. Gotta love him.
But, time travel, God knows what happened.
Yes.
And he does great Scott, so everybody can, scream.
But no one did, because I don't think anyone knew what that was, except for us.
Some people on the left, I think, got it. Okay, now lastly.
Yes!
Another bit of a timeline fuck up, but whatever.
This is awesome.
The movie ends, and the end comes up on the screen. And it goes to black. But then it comes back, and we're back at the fair. And it's the shooting game. And he asks who wants to step up and try. And we hear a familiar voice say that they will. And we see the boots first and then pan up. And it's Jamie Foxx as Django.
Yeah, it is.
And he brings back, in his Django voice, it's like he just switched right back into it.
Yeah, exactly.
He says the line again, people die at the fair. Which, the way he says it sounds like a line he would have said in Django.
Yes.
Like I said, I know I should just enjoy the cameo for what it is. And I understand that, but I can't help but notice that the fact that Django is set in 1858. And this movie's set in, 1882. So Django would be, 25 or 30 years older than he was.
People don't age at the fair.
That's fine. Whatever. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
It was for me, that was the whole reason to even see this movie. So, yeah. If you think you can withstand, the dirty humor and the language and all that, you'll be fine. Which I'm sure most people, if you're not, over the age of 60 or 70, you'll be prepared. Just don't take your grandparents to this. My grandparents did want to see it, but I might want to warn them when I get home. Our next movie is The Normal Heart, which is HBO just aired it, and it's basically, I guess this is HBO's annual thing now. They have a movie about the gay community basically that comes out. And it wins all the Emmys, SAGs, and Globes.
And the last one they did, we also did on this video, so we have to do this one too.
Yeah. The Normal Heart is based on a play by a guy named Larry Kramer, who was, he was a screenwriter. He wrote, Women in Love, that movie that got Glenn Jackson her first Oscar. And I think he also worked on getting How to Survive a Plague made, which makes sense given the subject matter. And Ryan Murphy got a hold of it and is the director. You obviously know Ryan Murphy as the guy responsible for Glee and American Horror Story.
Yes.
So, I guess it depends on your opinion. I've heard a lot of people say Ryan Murphy did that movie. Well, I'm not checking it out now. But it's a serious foray into this. It has it's kind of like Longtime Companion meets Milk, is what it is, basically. And we immediately learn that it's not going to hold back. What it is the movie opens and we see Mark Ruffalo's character, who's basically the guy that wrote the play and also adapted it into this screenplay. Ruffalo's character is basically a fictionalized version of him. Very, very loosely fictionalized. It's basically an autobiography. He just changed the name. And he's going to Fire Island. And that's the opening scene of the movie. To show you how much this movie is not holding back what it's going to show, HBO is going to push that boundary. The very first scene of the movie is set at Fire Island. And this is when we learned that the AIDS epidemic is breaking out. Which back then was referred to as gay cancer because they had no idea what it was. And only gay people seem to be getting it. And then Ruffalo basically turns into this character he's already kind of out there and pissing people off because he wrote a revealing book. And now he kind of gets the stink eye every time he passes by somebody as he's walking around Fire Island because he seems really quiet and away from everybody. But then we slowly learn that he basically has a very loud, long voice that not everybody agrees with. But when the AIDS epidemic starts to break out, he starts to work with a doctor with polio, who's Julia Roberts, and they basically try to convince the gay community to stop having sex so they'll live, which doesn't go very well. And then eventually turns into, once they all start dropping off, it's time to, you know, get it out there and get awareness out so they can find a cure for it. I feel like this movie could have, okay. This movie is getting a great reaction from most people. Like, it's getting a really, you know, emotional, profound feelings out of people. I kind of wish I could have felt the same way, but I'm not seeing it. Well, here's the thing. First off, the movie's 2 hours and 15 minutes. Most of which is kind of I mean, I know it's a really serious subject, and there are scenes in the movie that are, you know, really emotional, but for the most part, it feels a lot more like melodrama. Like, well, here's the thing. Obviously, it's based on a play. So it's really, really, you know, meant to be theatrical. So there's a lot of yelling. Like, pretty much every scene in this movie is one of the actors' Emmy clip, basically. For 2 hours and 15 minutes. That's a long time. And after a while, it's sort of, like, you understand that, you know, it comes from an angry place, and a place that, you know, it's a voice that wants to be heard, but the movie kind of drives that into the ground so much that it stops having meaning after a while. Like, here, Ruffalo's character is almost always shouting. So much so that I imagine he might have trouble getting sympathy from people that can't, you know, directly, emotionally, or personally relate. It's not Ruffalo's fault or anything. I'm pretty sure he's got, like, the Emmy sealed up. But it's almost like they didn't think about the fact that they were adapting a play into a movie. A TV movie at that. And all the theatrics are still there. Like, the whole... You have to make sure the back row of the theater can hear you. All of that is still here, even though we're on a TV movie set. And it feels a little much, I guess. I know people can, you know, argue endlessly. Given how angry the characters are and how serious the subject matter is, emotions should never really be too much. But it just was not always... It actually kind of rarely worked, actually. The one great scene that Ruffalo has, which is weird to say because I love him as an actor, Alfred Molina plays his brother. That's right, the Hulk and Dr. Octopus are brothers now.
Nice.
And he's basically, and obviously Alfred Molina is straight, so and he doesn't really, he's not willing to, he loves Ruffalo as a brother, obviously, just unconditionally, but he's not willing to admit that they're equals. So Ruffalo has this big moment where he says, you know, we may be brothers, but I'm never going to talk to you again unless you admit we're equals. And he doesn't. So, all the actors have a really great scene, and there are a lot of actors in it. Jim Parsons has a really good part. There was another one of those where, like, you look at the cast list and you see names like Jim Parsons and Matt Bomer and stuff like that, and you think, oh, they just got together, like, all of the gay famous TV actors and just put them into a movie. This is just going to be whatever. But they're actually all really great in it. They're not cast just because they're gay. They're cast because they were made for the parts, and they're really great in them. To give it credit for that. Parsons actually has a few good dramatic scenes. Mainly, the scene that really stands out is he basically has this process he goes through, where as the epidemic is getting worse and more of the people they know are dropping off, he goes through his Rolodex and takes their card out, and basically has, like, a graveyard of Rolodex cards in his drawer. He doesn't throw them away, because he can't. And then finally he gets fed up, and he's speaking at one of their funerals. And he's basically talking about how this is, like, they're losing count of how many funerals they've gone to. And he has this big speech at the podium where he talks about how he's tired of going to funerals and how he's just fed up with everything, and it's a really great scene for him. Taylor Kitsch is basically the president of their organization, except he's in the closet, especially because he's kind of an important person. So there's drama with that, and there's his standout scene mainly is, well, Taylor Kitsch has more of a stoic way about him, especially since he's playing the closeted character. But he does have a great scene. This whole scene is really brutal. He's basically at the bar with Ruffalo, and he's telling the story about what happened to the guy he was with. And basically he's practically dying. So Taylor Kitsch is putting him on a plane and taking him to a hospital out of town. But the pilot sees that the guy has AIDS and is dying and refuses to fly the plane. So they go, and eventually he ends up dying. So they take him to the hospital. And while he is dead, he has to call his mother, and the mother has to show up. Because all the doctors refuse to examine his body. Because they think it's, contagious. Well, you know what I mean. So what they do is they wrap his body in a trash bag and throw him out. And it's a really brutal scene to watch. And that's Taylor Kitsch's big scene when he has to tell... I mean, they cut and they actually show you what's happening, but it also cuts back to Taylor Kitsch telling the story, so he gets his big emotional moment. The performance a lot of people are talking about is Matt Bomer's performance. Apparently people love this guy. I don't watch the show that he's on. I think the only other movie I've seen him in is Magic Mike. And until I saw him in this, I didn't even know which one he was in that. Because I just heard his name, I'd never actually seen his face. He plays Ruffalo's lover. And they, after a very revealing sex scene, they basically become a couple, and we watch their love blossom, but that is immediately cut short when Matt Bomer's character gets AIDS. So then he basically does. There's a lot of comparisons to this. He's basically playing Rayon. He's basically doing Jared Leto's part in Dallas Buyers Club.
That's what it was sounding like.
And people are just really loving this performance. There wasn't a whole lot to me that stood out about him, but he does have one really, really great scene where Alfred Molina is a lawyer, so he has to go to him and say, I'm your brother's lover, and I'm about to die, so I need to make a will now. And that's a really great scene. It reminded me a lot of the scene where Leto visits his dad at the end of Dallas Buyers Club. But for the most part, he just kind of has to go through the motions of the dying character that we've seen a lot. So, and another actor that's getting a lot of attention and acclaim is an actor named Joe Mantello, who is also a theater director. Apparently, he's most well known for being the director of Wicked. He is also an actor, apparently, and a really good one. He's another one of those characters that just has a lot of big scenes throughout the movie. Which means he's probably sealed for an Emmy nomination as well. Now, despite its really great... And of course, Julia Roberts is really good, and she has a couple of standout scenes. There's one really nice scene where, she tells the story to Ruffalo about how she became the way she is, and what she's had to go through, and he tries to get her to dance, and it turns dramatic. And she's basically the one that's fighting for them the whole time, so she's also got a lot of those big speech moments. But the main problem of the movie is basically this whole... The only way this can stop is for them to stop having sex with each other, which is something that they fought so hard to be able to actually do in society. So they're pretty much always giving stuff up, whether it be their rights or their lives. And it is a really tragic story, but this... I don't know, this movie wasn't doing it for me. It wasn't bringing me to that emotional place. Like, I never felt... As good as the acting was, and as good as powerful as some of those scenes are, particularly the scene with Parsons at the funeral, I never once really felt like I was going to get emotional watching it. Which, given how heavy the movie is, kind of seemed weird to me. Because I'm not that hard to break. But, you know, I mean, I'm not like, you know, extremely susceptible, but if there had been one scene powerful enough, it could have happened. But I never really strongly felt watching it. And I really felt like I should have been. Because I know a lot of people have had that reaction to it.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. So, and another thing is it's kind of hard to tell when exactly you're supposed to really feel, because there's a lot of... Obviously, as the epidemic grows, they're getting news constantly that somebody else has died. But it'll be a character's name we've never heard before. Or maybe a character we saw once. And I know it's a tragedy no matter what, because this is how it really was, whether you like knew the characters really well or not. But being a movie, that makes it a little hard to get involved. So, yeah, and there's some scenes that just seem really off, and like I think this is where the criticism for Brian Murphy's direction kind of happens, because there's like it'll be like he seems to really, you know, have a way with like the love portion of it, but then when it gets to, I know what people with AIDS go through is really scary and disturbing, but he shoots it in a really off-putting way. I mean, I know it's supposed to be off-putting because it's a horrible thing, but it's basically like he's going back to his American Horror Story roots, the way he films the sick people. It's really, I don't know. Almost like a Cronenberg movie or something. But not in a good way. And there's one scene where they, much like Alison Pill's character in Milk, one lesbian joins their cause. And her introduction is really weird because they're moving something, and Parsons is standing here by the door, and she walks up and she's kind of looking at someone. He's like, "Can I help you?" We've never seen this character before. This is the first time we've seen her in the movie. And in one cut, without even cutting away, after Parsons says, "Can I help you?" we get one shot of her giving like her entire life story. And that scene seemed really weird and out of place. And there's a few of those swinging around. There's a weird thing when Ruffalo and Boom are basically on a date at his house. And there's this weird setup where they've actually met and had sex before, and Ruffalo doesn't remember. Because he never actually saw his face. It was like a spontaneous thing at like a sauna. We see this in flashback, and it plays like a sleazy porn commercial. And I don't know what that directorial choice was, but yeah, there's a lot more. I mean, there's a lot of scenes in this movie that do work, mainly because of the performances, but most of this movie doesn't, for me anyway. So, like I said, a lot of people are having the opposite reaction. A lot of people are really emotionally taken by it, so I guess that's just my loss. So, I much preferred Behind the Candelabra, but we'll see what they have to offer next year. Oh, God. It continues. Our next movie came out last week. I'm late. It's a new movie that you've probably never heard of, despite the fact that it stars Robin Williams and Mila Kunis and Peter Dinklage. You would have think people would have heard of this movie.
I think so.
But no. It's called The Angriest Man in Brooklyn. And apparently it's such a small release, it just came out in theaters like last week. It's already like on DVD in like a month or two. It's just a really swift process for it. Okay. So, The Angriest Man in Brooklyn is about supposedly the angriest man in Brooklyn, which is Robin Williams. And you know immediately what his problem probably is, because we start with a flashback. We get what looks like almost it reminded me a lot of the beginning of Face Off, where the way it's shot, you know it was in the past, and it's supposed to feel dreamlike because everybody's so happy, but you know tragedy's afoot. It felt so much like that. And the date comes up and it says 1989. And there's Robin Williams and Melissa Leo, and they're married, and they have a couple of kids, and they're playing in the park, and everything's happy. I know I'm being nitpicky here, but the first thing that threw me off about this was, that's not what Robin Williams looked like in 1989, because I know what he looked like in 1989.
Yeah?
Captain, oh Captain, this guy is not. Oh, Captain, my Captain, sorry. So, anyway, we immediately cut ahead. We don't see what the tragedy is right away. We have to get that in exposition later. We just know that he's sitting in traffic and he's angry. It could have turned into falling down right here, but no, the movie's not that good.
Awesome.
So Robin Williams is sitting in his car in traffic, and he's really angry. We're told this in the title. Okay. I'm going to tell you right away that Robin Williams was really miscast in this movie. Because I've seen Robin Williams angry many times. But for some reason, when he's playing the angriest man in Brooklyn, I'm not getting that vibe. That scene in Good Will Hunting, yeah, let's remember for a second that Robin Williams won an Oscar once.
Yes.
There's a scene in Good Will Hunting where he grabs Matt Damon by the throat and shoves him against the wall and says, if you ever disrespect my wife again, I'm gonna fucking end you. In that one sentence, he showed more anger in Good Will Hunting than he did entirely in this movie where he plays the title character of the angriest man in Brooklyn.
Maybe the title's supposed to be ironic.
No.
No?
The whole point of the movie is that he's angry.
No.
Well, here's the thing. The problem is he's upset because... Actually, I'll tell you the plot first. Because that's how the movie does it.
Okay.
We're following two characters with weird narration. They're narrating their own stories from a third-person perspective. I don't know what that means, but
Alright.
we're following this guy who is Robin Williams, and we're following a doctor played by Mila Kunis. And they're both having really bad days. Mila Kunis' cat has just died, and he was her best friend. And Robin Williams is just pissed off at the world. He's just one of those people. Like, he hits a taxi cab hits him on the way to work, and no, he's on the way to the hospital for an appointment because he has migraines. Well, finally he gets to the hospital, and the doctor, his doctor is taking a vacation with his family, so Mila Kunis is filling in for him. So she's flustered because not only is her cat dead, but she's taking her own patients and the doctor's patients. Not to mention, the whole reason he went on a vacation with his family is because he was cheating on his wife with Mila Kunis' character. So that sets up that kind of character. So their lives come together when she enters the doctor's office. Already he's pissed off because it's not his real doctor. And she says, I'm filling in and stuff like that. And she looks at the results to his MRI. Well, it turns out that he has an aneurysm on the stem of his brain. And he has an hour and a half to live. Now, that's actually a lie, because he is technically on the verge of death. But it could be, a week or two. But she's so flustered, and she hates him so much after this encounter because he's so angry and pushy and mad and mean. He keeps asking her how long he's got to live. And I guess as revenge for him being mean to her, she says 90 minutes just off the top of her head. The whole basis of this movie is something Mila Kunis' character says off the top of her head. Wow. So he believes that he has an hour and a half to live. So he goes out and he decides he's going to bang his wife one last time. He's going to reunite with his son because they're estranged. And he's going to throw a big party with all of his old friends. And he's going to, rebuild all these bridges before he bites it. And he's kind of distanced from his brother, too, even though they work together. His brother is Peter Dinklage. So, that's basically what kind of movie this is. And you know exactly where it's going, of course. did you think this movie would end any other way apart from him mending his relationships and not being so angry anymore?
As long as he doesn't run naked in the school hallway, I'm happy.
Or in Central Park?
Yes.
Yeah, speaking of that, this is Robin Williams' first starring role since World's Greatest Dad 5 years ago. Not counting Old Dogs.
Oh, God.
So, and this is what it's come to. Now, if you think that's a big gap, the director of this movie is a guy named Phil Alden Robinson, I think is his name. That guy is mainly known as the director of Field of Dreams. He did Field of Dreams and he did Sneakers, which is a really great movie with Robert Redford and Dan Aykroyd. And he made The Sum of All Fears, the Jack Ryan movie with Ben Affleck. The Sum of All Fears, 12 years ago, was the last movie this guy made before this one.
Oh.
There was a 12-year gap between the movies this guy made, and this is what he came up with.
They're Cameron numbers right there.
And for Robin Williams, 5 years without a starring role.
Yeah.
And this is what it comes to. Though he does have a movie called The Face of Love that we'll be getting to in a month or so. Here's the thing. What happens is this movie relies a lot... First off, I should probably go ahead and mention this. It's a remake of an Israeli movie that I didn't see called The 92 Minutes of Mr. Baum, I think it's called. I don't know if it was better than this, but I would say probably. The problem, first off, is... Okay. I don't know if you caught on or not. Probably not, but this movie is actually supposed to be a comedy. Could you even tell that at all?
Somewhat, but not really.
So, he's running around, and the first person he goes to tell, I believe, is his brother. Yes. And Dinklage doesn't quite catch on what he's talking about, because he's all, he only has an hour and a half to live, but he's beating around the bush with it, and then he just leaves. Because the guy tells a story about, you should be with your wife one last time, so he just runs out of the office and goes. But has enough time to dialogue with him on the steps first, and he still doesn't tell him out right there. But despite the fact that we're on such a time limit here, the movie has time to stop for exposition. Because, obviously, Mila Kunis starts to feel bad. So she runs around the city trying to find him, and she goes to Dinklage's office to tell him what happened. And that's when we have time to have the story of why he's the angriest man in Brooklyn. It's because his other son was killed in a hunting accident. And that his other son, who is Hamish Linklater from, Battleship, and that movie with Miranda July with the cat, he basically was supposed to join the company with Dinklage and Robin Williams. But he wanted to go into ballroom dancing instead. So Williams shunned him. We get a whole flashback. We get flashbacks for some reason. In a movie that's 83 minutes long and it's supposed to take place in the span of an hour and a half, this movie has fucking flashbacks in it. We get the whole ballroom dancing backstory, and we get the finding out the other brother died backstory through flashbacks. Because, and obviously, he already have business cards made out that have the 3 names on them. It's obviously all the same name because it's, Williams, Dinklage, and it was supposed to be the other son, you see. Mm-hmm. But now that he died, it has to be the other son. And since the other son wanted to not do that, that's why he resents him. So that's why he's angry. The problem is angry Robin Williams in this movie... I was not getting that at all. He seemed mildly frustrated a lot, but never seemed all that angry. I mean, he yelled a lot, but I still was not getting an angry vibe from him. Okay, here's the thing. If you want to do this, if you want to do a plot that is this, kind of in a dark place, even though it's a comedy, and you have an Oscar-winning actor like Robin Williams, what you do is you take... he went through that phase in 2002 where he did the creepy parts in Insomnia and 1 Hour Photo.
Yes.
And everybody loved him for that, because it was so out of left field. What would have been great to do is to take comedic Robin Williams and the really dark Robin Williams and find a middle ground and kind of make this character from that. But instead we kind of get, and here's the weird thing. I don't know how this works. You know the way Robin Williams is known for being. Like, really manic and all over the place.
Yeah.
Even though he's supposed to be the angriest man in Brooklyn, a lot of it relies on the Robin Williams shtick. Which just seemed really, really random at times. Where he will just be angry and then he'll start flailing. And this character was about as inconsistent as you could possibly be. And now there is a couple of jokes involving his little journey here to find, redemption. Like, when he goes to, the setup with his party, where he's inviting all of his friends, and they're gonna meet up, and everything's gonna be happy, and they're gonna catch up and do all that. Mm. One person shows up, and it's Richard Kind. And he's there, he's already eating cake, and he's making himself at home. And it's kind of a funny scene. And it actually goes to an unexpected place where the whole joke is the only person that showed up was Richard Kind, and he was really friendly and really happy, and everything was great. But it actually turned into the only reason he was there was to settle a score over a girlfriend that Robin Williams doesn't even remember stealing from him. And that's the extent we get of the party. Nobody else shows up.
Goodbye.
So, yes. Making a Serious Man reference.
Yes.
So we get another recognizable face when he decides that he's going to... There was a kind of a hint at this earlier at the very beginning scene where they couldn't get the tape recorder to work. Or the camcorder to work. So, he's going to make one last video for his son because his son won't take his calls. So the son has no idea what's going on. So he has a homeless guy record him on a video doing like one of those, last goodbye, I'm sorry videos. Mm. But before that, he has to find one. So he goes, obviously the joke is he's on a time. He thinks he only has an hour and a half to live. So he goes into the store, and it's James Earl Jones. And James Earl Jones gets the funniest line in the movie, even though you can see the line coming from a mile away as soon as the scene starts. Naturally, he runs into an issue here because he's on a time limit, and James Earl Jones' character has a really, really over-the-top stutter. And that's what they do with this scene. Like I said, the payoff is funny, even though you can see it coming from a mile away. It's as funny as the movie gets, unfortunately. Alright. So, and we do finally see, and you can tell because they shroud his face in mystery for a while before they show him, but you can tell by his voice immediately. We do see the doctor that Mila Kunis was sleeping with, and it's a cameo by Louis C.K.
Nice.
They brought Louis C.K.'s only scene in this movie is to have sex with Mila Kunis. I'm pretty sure that's how he got the job. They approached him, they said, you have to come in for one day, pretend you're screwing Mila Kunis, and you can be on your way. Who wouldn't take that?
Indeed.
So, there's no creativity whatsoever. With this kind of concept, you'd think they would do something with it that didn't seem recycled or really cliche and cheesy. But it hits pretty much every note you expect it to, and worse. Mila Kunis has a couple of good scenes, but for the most part, this movie doesn't have much to offer. It takes a lot. I mean, I know people will argue this, but for me it takes a lot to make Robin Williams not that funny. And this just made no sense. And of course, suddenly, the movie wants to go all dramatic in the last 10 minutes. It suddenly remembers what kind of movie it is, what setup it has. Because obviously, the reason they're looking for him is even though he's not going to die in an hour and a half, he's going to eventually soon. So, it's kind of all for a reason, but at the same time, not as... whatever. Who cares? And the movie tries to end on a laugh, despite going the really dramatic route, but it just wasn't working at all. Nothing about this movie works. At all. And in a movie with that kind of cast, you have 2 Oscar winners in here, Plus you have Mila Kunis and Peter Dinklage and James Earl Jones. A cameo by Louis C.K. Richard Kind. How could you not do something meaningful with this?
Yeah. It's a lost opportunity.
I think it all comes from the fact that it's not Williams' fault. I think he was just horribly miscast. Is the problem. So, yes, that was an extremely, extremely wasted opportunity. It doesn't end.
Almost.
No, we still have 2 left.
I know.
Oh my god, this video is going to be too long. Our next movie is called The Big Ask, which is an extremely independent movie that got a really tiny release last week. We're catching up on this one too.
Okay.
It's got a young cast of 3 couples. And the director is Thomas Beatty, who I believe is Ned Beatty's son. And I say this because, number 1, Ned Beatty's in the movie, and number 2, I looked up his biography to see if they were related. It could have been a coincidence. So I go to Thomas Beatty's biography, and what do I see? What you do when you go on IMDb is you see the bio, and then it says the user's name that posted the bio. This guy posted his own bio on IMDb. This is how fucking indie he is.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't say I guess it's the whole he wants to, make a name for himself as him and not use any, pull that he already has.
Yeah, of course.
So it doesn't say, usually it just would say blatantly son of Ned Beatty and move on. It says son of an actor. So I put the pieces together and I was like, yeah, I think this guy's Ned Beatty's son.
Oh my god.
So the couples are David Krumholtz and Melanie Lynskey, the wonderful, amazing, gorgeous Melanie Lynskey. Zachary Knighton and Anna O'Reilly, and Jason Ritter and Joanne Jacobs. A very nice young cast we got here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of talented people here. Jason Ritter in particular, I've been really liking him a lot lately. He did this movie a couple years ago called A Bag of Hammers, which it's a little out there, but he's really, really great in it. The apple didn't far fall off the talent tree there.
No.
And basically what it is there's a lot of build-up in regards to the title, The Big Ask, which is David Krumholtz's character's mother has just died, and he's really not taking it well at all. So these 6 have basically been best friends forever. So they're going to rent a house in the middle of the desert from French Stewart and basically hang out there for a while and help him through this. But the whole point of bringing them all together is he has a question to ask. You're going to know what I'm talking about immediately. I kind of figured what it was, and it reminded me of another movie immediately. So they get together, and they catch up, and everything's great, and they're best friends, and they've got great chemistry, and everything's wonderful. And then finally, they're all gathered in the living room, and Krumholtz dramatically sits down and says, the reason I brought you all here today is because you've always been here for me, and I've always been able to count on you. And at this really difficult time in my life, I've got to ask you for an incredible favor. And it's a really big deal. So I really want you to think about it. Now, if you look at the plot synopsis, it doesn't give away what the Big Ask is. But I'm going to tell you anyway, because that's the way these go. And it's not a big twist either. It's like 15 minutes in.
Yeah.
They just like the little, I guess that's to pull you in. He takes a deep breath. He looks at all of them, and he says, I want to have sex with everyone in this room. However, there's a twist there. I thought that was a funny setup, because I was like, it reminded me of Hump Day.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of Chasing Amy.
Oh, I obviously get that immediately, but yeah, Hump Day comes to mind too.
But then it goes into a really weird place. That would have been a great setup. Literally everybody in the room, including the guys. But no, that's actually just a throwaway joke when the guys say, you mean us too? He wants to have Melanie Lynskey, who's his girlfriend, and he wants to have they were girlfriends all at the same time. And he says the reason for this is because he needs a giant wave of love. And these are girls that he's loved his whole life, you know. So he feels like he will be filled with so much love, having a sexual experience with all three of them at the same time, it'll help him get over his dead mother. And that's his logic. Now, of course, everybody thinks he's insane, and Melanie Lynskey is humiliated. And the whole movie, the whole rest of the movie, is him trying to convince them to let this happen.
Oh, wow.
And that begs the question, what are we supposed to think of this character? Because as much as I really like David Krumholtz as an actor, and he can be really super appealing, this character is so repulsively off, I have no idea what we're supposed to think of him. Because he is absolutely dead serious. And it's even brought to light in a scene where it almost tries to bring sympathy to his cause, but then they just bring it back down, because after this finally happens, they're all sitting at a picnic table the next day, and they're all like, so that was just, you know, that was like a joke, right? This isn't, you know, we're just going to let that go and forget that question was ever asked, right? And then Krumholtz stands up at the picnic table, and he's like, I want to tell you all a story about this desert. There was something that happened here a while back, and Jason Ritter and Zachary Nine cut him off immediately and say, we know what this is, we know what this game is, and we think they're being overly paranoid, and they say, you just want to tell this big, heartfelt story about the desert, and you want it to work as like this way of making these girls fall in love with you and just want to have sex with you immediately. That's the only reason you're about to tell this story. And they're like, just stop it, leave him alone, that's mean, don't do that. And Krumholtz just kind of sits down, disappointed, and goes, yeah, that's why. That actually was his plan.
Wow.
So you have these best friends, and the whole movie is one friend trying to convince the other two friends to let him fuck all their girlfriends at the same time. And they've managed to somehow form an entire movie out of this. Now, what really would have made this movie work is if it was like a one-set play kind of setting. Where it was just all dialogue in like one room, and all this went down, but that's not the way they took. This movie goes to a lot of different places and a lot of really weird places. And it's supposed to, I don't know if it's supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be a comedy. That is way too much of a recurring thing lately, when I can't tell if something's supposed to be a fucking comedy or not when it's labeled as one.
Yeah.
That's getting really bad, but there are, you know, funny things in the movie. Like, yeah, it's a funny setup in general, but with how creepy the character progresses into, it's kind of hard to laugh at after a while and just kind of be weirded out by. There's this thing where he loves having his chest rubbed by them, so he tries to get them to do that. I don't know what that was. Maybe it's something his mom used to do. I think is what they might be hinting at, but he never actually said that. I don't know. And the movie never really tells us if we're supposed to... It's hard to tell if we're supposed to sympathize with him or not, because what they do with the Julian Jacobs character is she starts to get just as weird as him, because she's almost convinced. Like, apparently she feels like an absolute obligation to do this, because apparently she, like, had an injury once, and he, like, stayed with her every day and helped her. So her character is almost convinced that she has to do this because of that. And she's Jason Ritter's girlfriend, so this is blowing his mind. And sooner or later, we're starting to lose the stable characters in this movie. Maybe that's the point, but it started to make me more uncomfortable. There is a really funny scene in the movie where they try to get this off his chest by... They tell the girls they're going to go bowling. And so they take him to a hotel. And they wait for a while, and then the doorbell rings, and they go and they answer it, and it's two bottom-of-the-barrel prostitutes. And they're like, there, just be with them, and this will be out of your system. But he says it's not the same thing because he doesn't love them the way he loves the other girls, and he locks himself into a bathroom and won't come out. And Jason Ritter has this glorious line. His delivery was perfect, where it's, he's saying, I'm not coming out, you get them out of here. And Jason Ritter's line is, you shut your mouth and you fuck those hookers! But he doesn't fuck the hookers.
Of course not.
So they take him home, and there is another weird subplot where this character just gets fucking weirder and weirder, and much harder to sympathize with. Like I said, I didn't even know if we're supposed to or not, but I wasn't. So we meet this old guy that the character that Ned Beatty plays, and he just kind of wanders in from. He lives like 2 miles down the desert, and he's looking for his dog. Well, the night before we had seen a dog walk up to David Krumholtz, and he was friendly with it and stuff like that. And obviously the other two guys don't know the dog, but Krumholtz plays dumb also. So he says the dog's missing for 3 days. I just assumed it was dead, and he's sad and he walks away. And then Krumholtz confesses to them after he's like, by the way, I saw the dog last night. And he doesn't have an answer for why he didn't say anything. Well, it's revealed that he's keeping the dog in the guest house for himself. And he has this weird ritual with it, where I don't know if it's... He pets the dog while he verbally abuses it. Like, he pets the dog on the head lovingly while telling it how much of a piece of dirty shit it is. I think that's supposed to be him talking to the dog as if he's talking to himself. Like, it's how he feels about himself. But he's taking it out on this dog. I don't know.
That's all over the place.
I don't know. There's a weird-ass scene where he goes out into the desert and just lays there and has this weird dream where, like, it's Ned Beatty and he's a cactus, and he hugs him and the cactus stabs him, and I don't know, it was really bizarre. And it wasn't the fun movie I was expecting when it started. There's a side character that's Dale Dickey, who is French Stewart's jaded wife. And she turns out to be a psychotic character. By the end of this movie, it's almost a thriller. And I expected the characters to just start killing each other. There's a senseless side plot where, just when you think Jason Ritter and Zachary Knighton are the only characters that have their heads on straight, Jason Ritter actually wants to bang Melanie Linsky, and does. So they're not trustworthy either. So by the end, you have these 6 characters, and it started with Krumholtz being the one that was weird and out there and unsympathetic. And now you have Zachary Knighton's character is pretty much the only one that has his head on straight now. And that's not good. Because they're not weird in a charming way or a sympathetic way. They're just fucked up. I don't know if that was the point or what, but, yeah. So, that's basically what this movie is, in a nutshell. And the big question is whether or not the big thing will happen or not. If for some reason you come across this movie and you're interested, I won't say, but this movie just got really, really uncomfortable in the worst way as it went on. And really did not know what fuck tone it was at all. It started off with, hey, this could be a really funny, one set piece kind of thing, and now I'm under the impression all the characters may very well be dead by the end of it. I don't know. And it's not even like a black comedy kind of way. It shifts from somewhat comedy about friendship to all these characters are fucked in the head. I don't know. But the likability of the cast when they did have their heads on straight was great. Like I said, I really, really... Melanie Linsky can just put me in, like, a hypnosis. And like I said, Jason Ritter's great, and Knighton's great, and the other 2 girls do, what they can. Honor Riley doesn't have all that much to do, but as far as the other 2 do, but the cast is appealing, and like I said, Crumbles has been a lot more appealing than this. It's just the character that's really off-putting. I almost shudder to think about it. So, yeah. Our last movie is a movie that came out. It got a VOD release at some point. It was supposed to come out in 2012. I think in the UK it came out in 2012. But in the US it just got lost. But now it's on DVD. It was either last week or this week. I think it was last week. This is Gambit. Which didn't have a great reputation because it kind of just got passed around a lot. Before it even found a release date on DVD and VOD. It took forever to even get made because the script just kind of went from hands to hands. It's a script by the Coen brothers that's based on it's a remake of a Michael Caine movie, and Shirley MacLaine. Which I didn't see the original movie, but the way I've read, it's kind of the same thing, only a little better. And the director is Michael Hoffman, who did The Last Station. So, you have the director of The Last Station. The Last Station wasn't anything that I loved, but it was a well-regarded movie. This starred Helen Mirren and Christopher Plummer and James McAvoy and Paul Giamatti. That's a really, top-tier cast, to say the least. And now you have him directing a Coen Brothers script starring Colin Firth, Cameron Diaz, and Alan Rickman. It seemed like nothing could go wrong, right? Well, this is kind of that thing. People are a little worried about Unbroken and that upcoming Spielberg movie because this is our first taste of what happens when the Coen brothers don't direct their own script. And now people are worried. So we'll see.
It's like Cop-Out, sadly.
Yeah, only in reverse.
Yep.
Gambit is the story of a reprehensible boss played by Alan Rickman who collects art. So, Colin Firth is going to basically screw him over with this scheme regarding a forger played by Tom Courtenay, another well-regarded legendary actor. And they're basically going to recreate a painting and sell it off to him and completely screw him over. Also using a rodeo queen that's Cameron Diaz. Well, there's an interesting thing about this movie. Apparently, the original movie was notorious for this, but I didn't know about this until I was reading about it after I saw this, so it was a surprise to me. The interesting thing that this movie does is we have the plan, which is it seems really simple. You forge the painting, you take a picture of it with Cameron Diaz and her grandmother, who is Cloris Leachman, who only has like 2 lines in the movie. She's wasted. Another Oscar-winning actress in this movie, just gone. So they take a picture of it, and they send them to Rickman, and Rickman sees the picture. It's a really, really, sought-after painting. So he says, I want that, so they do the deal with Diaz, even though Diaz is in on it. He buys it, it's a fake painting. He's screwed over, and they have that. The end. And we see it play out flawlessly. So flawlessly, Diaz's character doesn't even speak through the whole plan. And you assume the movie's going to go from there. Because the whole thing was pulled off flawlessly in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, it started with them going to the rodeo and seeing Diaz for the first time from a distance in a bar. And he walked up to her, and the plane went flawlessly from there. Well, as soon as the plane is pulled off, we cut back to Colin Firth in the bar, watching her from a distance before he approaches her. And what we just saw is how the task is supposed to go down. The rest of the movie is how it really went down. That's the big setup. And obviously, like all movies that do this, it doesn't go according to plan. And it turns into this wacky slapstick comedy. Kind of, if you want to call it that. Okay. First off, it's not so much that this movie is bad, like really bad. It could have been really good if it was better executed. It's not well executed at all. And it feels like really shoddily put together. And most of the time it's not that funny. Well, first off, as far as Firth is concerned, Firth was a good casting choice, and it's really nice to see him in a movie like this, where he can, normally he's, posh British man, or, winning Oscars for playing the king and all that. But this, he just kind of gets to let go and do the wacky slapstick kind of performance, which is really fun to see him, do, even if he's not exactly aces at it. And Rickman's just kind of a caricature. He's just kind of there to be the overbearing boss. Like, there's really no other thing. There's a recurring joke that involves him being, he likes to be nude. The very last shot of this movie before the movie ends is Alan Rickman's ass. I'm just going to warn you now. That's all his character has to work with. That's the only thing his character is. There's also his right-hand man, who is Stanley Tucci, who basically makes sure that paintings are not frauds before he buys them. He is really funny on it, as he always is, because he's Stanley Tucci. Cameron Diaz, on the other hand. Cameron Diaz, I think, is where this movie really fails. Cameron Diaz is extremely likable. She's great in a lot of movies. She looks really good in this movie. But this character, I think this performance might embarrass her in the future if it isn't already, when she looks back on it. Because she does the really loud, over-the-top Southern accent, and she's basically playing the dingbat. And it's really, really... no. She's not an... I think her character was supposed to be appealing in that sense. Like, she's so dumb, she's adorable kind of way. But she's just a really frustrating, irritating, annoying character. And like I said, I think this is just going to be a performance that she's going to look back on a little embarrassed when the time comes, so... I won't say, she's, horrible and bad from now on. There is a ridiculous scene where, towards the end, they're in a museum, and they're trying to do the whole scheme, and a lion is loose. I don't even remember how that happened. So since she's a rodeo queen, we have a scene, and it's a very obvious CG lion. The one right out of Jumanji. And she uses her rodeo queen skills to lasso a lion. This movie was written by the Coen brothers. I had to keep reminding myself of that. Huh. I think they must have seen it a lot better in their heads, or maybe they disowned it or something, but... Oh, God. But here's the thing, though, is... It's not, like, a movie that I hate. It's not, like, bad. It's likable enough that I would have hated it a lot more if some of these scenes were in another movie. That's how I knew I didn't hate it. Because there were scenes in this movie that I would just be all over if it was in a worse movie. Like, the whole thing about this scheme is to get away with it scot-free. But there's a couple of times where they cheat. Like, there's one particular scene where Colin Firth is on a ledge, and she's down here with Rickman. And he's trying to tell her what happened. And he's screaming at her, and she's screaming at him. But in kind of a hushed scream. And apparently Rickman doesn't see or hear this, ever. And he's standing right here amidst it. So, that. And then sometimes they really, really cheapen what could have been great comedic scenes, like Blake Edwards style. Because you have, Firth keeps going into this woman's room. Because he's on the ledge, and he's lost his pants. His pants fell off of him and into a tree. So he's on this ledge in his boxers, and he has to go through this other woman's window to get out. And he has to try to not get caught. So many things you can do with this setup. Blake Edwards would have had a field day with this. But they basically make it to where she catches him, he just sits down at her table, and she finds him in there. And what great comedic genius could have happened in this scene is immediately extinguished with him just getting out of it by saying, "Oh my, I'm in the wrong room," and he leaves. All the possibilities.
Wow.
"Oh, I have the wrong room, sorry, I'm leaving," is how that scene ends. So much for all the build-up and suspense of how he was going to get out of that. If I had known it was that easy, the scene wouldn't have mattered at all like it does now.
Yeah.
There's kind of a love story between Firth and Diaz. There's really no foundation to it. It's just kind of there for the sake of it. Because it's a male and female character, and you just can't resist that, I guess. And the whole, she basically has to seduce Rickman in order for this to go well, and he gets all jealous. Whatever. So yes, this could have been a great homage to, classic comedy and physical comedy, but it basically just falls short every time it could turn into something great. They just kind of stopped trying. They didn't care about their punchlines at all. I'm beginning to think they took the Coen Brothers script and reworked it a little bit.
It's possible.
It's only their names on it, but I can't imagine this was a script by them. It had to have been something they wrote a really, really long time ago. I don't know how long ago they actually wrote it since the script changed hands so much, but... God, I don't know. Like I said, though, it's not like... And it's got, it's got some bodily humor, and there's a particular joke they milk where, Firth has to put an ice pack on himself, and then once he's done, there's a giant wet spot on his pants. They use that. So yeah, in a lot better hands, this could have been a great homage to classic comedy, but instead it's this. So, a lot of missed opportunities there. A lot.
It's that's the theme of today's video.
Yeah.
Speaking of that...
What a sad week.
Yeah. And next week doesn't look too promising either.
I guess we'll see.
So, as always, we're going to recap all 6 movies and give our final answers for all 6 of them. So, Maleficent?
No.
A Million Ways to Die in the West?
Sure.
A Normal Heart?
If you have the reaction everybody else had, go for it, but I didn't.
The Angriest Man in Brooklyn?
No.
The Big Ask?
No.
And
No.
Gambit. Wow.
Great.
Bone up, take it home.
At least I didn't outright despise anything
No.
last week.
No, I have a feeling that review's coming soon. May come next week, who knows? You never know nowadays what's going to get reviewed. We've got the 2 new release movies, Fault in Our Stars and The Edge of Tomorrow. And
It's just Edge of Tomorrow, there's no dog.
well,
And we have some limited releases like Clark Gregg's movie, Trust Me, that he wrote, directed, and stars in, and Ty West's new movie, The Sacrament. And probably a couple more.
Rage is coming soon, too.
Yeah, I think it's next week.
Next week. Not the week after, but the week after, so yeah. So, AJ, any parting words?
That's it.
We've got Versus coming at you in 2 days, and let's just say you knew this once upon a dream.